telling them that they had to tear down their insulation or else. I went to the council to try to figure out what is this situation. It seemed a bit mad to me. In a climate emergency, we weren't doing everything we could to remove barriers for people to retrofit their homes, to do their bit, to reduce their emissions, as well as lowering their energy bills. It seemed to me this family had done everything right, but somehow were being punished. The council had basically told me there is not real clarity on this. They couldn't say yes or no. You had to get planning permission. And so what we did was kind of talk with Paul Murphy's office about the situation with the planning, the lack of clarity around the planning process and what could be done so that the barriers could be removed. But I think really what we want to do is hear from Clive and Samantha about their situation, what has happened in the past with all of, getting it done and the letters that you received from the council. And then we'll also hear from Paul about the bill that we're introducing today to bring clarity to the issue so that it doesn't impact future homeowners that want to retrofit their homes and don't want to be worried that they're going to get a letter, potentially facing fines, thousands of euros in fines, as well as imprisonment. So Clive or Samantha, if you want to maybe tell us a bit about how this all started, who you went with, and then...
just stick it in the middle, Fiachra, would be great. Yeah. In the middle of the two people. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, basically we looked into it in March 2018. Our home was built in 74, so it was an old home. So we looked into insulating the house, and we found a company, RSA registered company, to do the work that was carried out. At no time were we told we needed planning permission, or we just thought we were doing the right thing, getting the house retrofitted, and to find out 6 years later then we got 4 letters in the door to say we need to take it down. Was a bit of a shock to the system, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Samantha, it must have been very stressful over the last year, basically, since the council first knocked on your door.
It was, yeah, it was very stressful for the simple reason we thought we were doing the right thing. Our home needed to be, her bills were very, very high, and we needed to change something. So we decided, okay, we need windows and doors, but we'd also look into getting the wrap done to the house. We looked around, as Clive said, and we found a reputable company, and they ticked all the boxes. So we decided we'd go with them, and they had agreed. They came out and had a chat with us, and then they said that they could even do the grant for us. So they applied for the grant for us from the council.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And I'm going to maybe turn it over to Paul here to introduce the bill.
Pass it.
Oh, yep.
Thank you.
All the mics.
All the mics. The first thing to do is to really thank Clive and Samantha for speaking out about this, because they're precisely people who have tried to do the right thing all the way along the line. We need millions of families across the country to take the step that this family have taken in terms of trying to insulate their homes, bringing down their carbon emissions, and also bringing down their bills. We think that they should be doing it with a lot more support from the state in terms of 100% grants, in terms of a state construction company, and so on. But at the very, very least, they should not be criminalised or potentially criminalised for doing what they have done. And the idea that you would face thousands of euros in fines or potential imprisonment for simply getting external wall insulation on your house is obviously outrageous. I think people, when they've read the story in the papers, when they've heard from Clive and Samantha over the past couple of weeks, have been shocked to hear that this is the current reality. That current reality is confirmed in an answer to a parliamentary question from the Minister of Housing, who states that those who install external insulation may require planning permission, and this decision is made by each council on a case-by-case basis. Just to be clear, by the way, in case you have this view in your mind that they must have done something hideous to their house, I've come and seen their house. It's exactly the same external wall insulation that you see on homes all across the state. It looks nice, is in keeping with the other homes in the area. There's nothing crazy here whatsoever if you go out and see it, and there are various pictures online. So there is a flaw here, and it's a flaw in the legislation. which is that at the moment, external insulation is not excluded from the need for planning permission as a rule. So if you want to go and get solar panels at the moment, as long as you do it within certain rules that are set out in regulations, for example, there has to be a gap between the edge of the roof and the solar panels, there's a limit in terms of the number of solar panels and so on, but as long as you do it within certain rules, you can be very, very confident that there's no requirement for planning permission. You can put solar panels on your roof, you can go to the company, you can get the grant, and there is no danger whatsoever that the council is going to turn up at your door and say, have you got planning permission for that? And begin to send you letters saying you'll face a fine and then or potentially imprisonment. And effectively exactly the same thing now needs to happen for external wall insulation. We need to exempt external insulation from a requirement for planning permission, except in certain very limited circumstances. So that's what our bill, the Planning and Development, Exempted Development External Wall Insulation Bill 2025 does. It, as a rule, exempts external wall insulation from the need for planning permission, except if the structure is a protected structure, if it's located in an architectural conservation area, or by reason of the size, nature, or effect on its surroundings, that carrying out such development would seriously offend against principles of proper planning and sustainable development. So it creates an automatic assumption that no planning permission is required unless these conditions are met. And that's what is needed. It's very, very simple. It's a very, very simple bill. It's needed to avoid discouraging people from getting external insulation. I mean, when we highlighted this story, what we don't want to happen is that people think, oh no, there's something complicated, the council might get in touch with me, I won't go and get the external insulation. And like, Clive and Samantha will speak to you about how good the insulation is, how their house is warmer, how their bills have come down. We want people to be encouraged to do it, but at the moment there is a grey area and a concern for people, and so this will clarify that and make clear that you don't need planning permission. The council won't be coming after you. So this is necessary in terms of giving people like Clive and Samantha and hundreds of thousands, millions of families across the country that reassurance, but it's also necessary in terms of climate action. Buildings and homes are responsible for a large portion of our carbon emissions. It's one of the reasons we're pushing for minimum BER standards in the private rental sector, which is the coldest, most poorly insulated homes in the state. But this is a crucial measure to bring emissions down, and we need not to put barriers in people's way, but instead clear the way, make things very clear for people to be able to go and get this done, reducing their bills and reducing emissions. So that's what our bill would do.
Great, thanks very much, Paul. So open up to media questions.
Paul, just some questions on this subject. Just first of all, just to be clear, are you saying that because of what happened to Samantha and Clive, that could be putting off other people from maybe going down this route? And then secondly, obviously you're looking to introduce this bill. You can't introduce a bill retrospectively, so obviously this will may benefit other people, but Clive and Samantha, what happens to them?
Yeah, so...
Sorry, one sec. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. In terms of the second part of the question first, yes, it's true that this is not retrospective. It can't be retrospective. I understand, and Clive and Samantha might be able to provide further details, but they're currently on their third attempt at getting retention permission from the council, and we certainly hope that the council will see sense and grant that retention, and therefore the issue for Clive and Samantha will hopefully be positively resolved without any fines, without any imprisonment or anything like that. In terms of our people being put off, I think there's certainly a danger that people now hear that things are not as simple as perhaps they assumed, that they could go to a company which is SEAI registered, approved, and then later down the line be faced with a knock on the door from the council and being told, oh, we really need planning permission, now you need to apply for retention. That is concerning for people, and we don't think it should put people off, because we think the imperative in terms of bringing people's energy bills down and bringing people's emissions down is so great that people should do it regardless. But there certainly is a danger of people being put off, and so the way to answer this is now for our legislation, or alternatively, if it can be done through regulation by the government and doesn't need this to go all through the stages of legislation, that's also fine. We're not precious about doing it our own particular way. But the point is, just like with solar panels, we need to make external wall insulation exempt from the requirement for planning permission.
Just that you were saying that when you were getting the grant, it was obviously with the council, like it's their money. Was there nothing that kind of said, like, was there not, well, you didn't see the form maybe because it was the contractor, but was there nothing on the form to say anything about planning permission? Like, it seems a bit strange that the council, it's kind of like they almost broke their own rules giving you the money for the insulation. Do you know, like, it seems really hard to get my head around. It's them that gave you the money to do it.
That's
welcome to our world.
Yeah, that's exactly the way we feel. Why would the council give us the grant and pass it? Somebody had to come out to my home to actually give the company the money in the first place. So somebody passed it. We don't know who passed it. Why would they give the money if the work wasn't done to the company? So yes, they did pass our grant, and we got no papers in regards of that we needed planning or anything for it. And it's done 6.5 years.
Just to add to that, what was explained to us was, I've said it before, it was to put a jacket on the house and put a nice hat in it, and it keeps all the heating in. So there was no conversation of planning when we said all the way down, all the way around, all the way up the top. It was never mentioned to planning. And as we say, if I'd have known now what I'd have done, I'd have never went ahead with it. I'd have said, no, you're okay. And I just kept me heating on for the whole day, which we were doing, where now we're not. I'd love to say, I recommend it to everyone. It's brilliant. It really is a good tool for anyone in an old home. But to go through this to get it done, it's not for me. It's put me off getting solar panels. That was our next step to do in the house, solar panels, and I just said, no, not going through this again, no way.
And your house, like, they're like, you know, it's an estate. Has there been other houses done similar design or that plain design? Like, it's like you can't really, like, it's very plain. You can't really go creative with it. You're trying to keep it simple.
We've looked into this. There's 13 other houses between 4 roads in our actual small area. We're in Elmcastle Walk, and there's 4 different other little small areas together, and there's 13 houses at the moment done in ours. It didn't stand out either because there's a lot of people have brought out the whole front of their home and has changed the colour brick as well. So it is red brick. People have gone for orange brick. People have gone for grey brick. So our house didn't stand out at all in our small little area. It didn't stand out at all.
I mean, your question in regards to the application, one thing for people to keep in mind is a homeowner will go and talk to a builder, right? And the builder is seen to be the expert on the issue. And that doesn't mean that Clive and Samantha didn't look into it themselves. I'm sure they did. They went through and got a number of different quotes. But if you talk to the SEAI, they'll say, go with an SEAI credited builder. They know the process. They did do that. You know, you don't fill out the grant forms or anything like that. They fill out all of the forms. They're the ones that go through all of that to make it easy for homeowners, as it should be. And so they're the ones then paying the price if something has gone wrong there. And I think if you went to the council's website, South Dublin County Council's website, to try to find out, do I need planning permission for this? You will not find a yes or no answer. It is not easy to figure it out. You click on lots of different things. I rang them to be like, this is not clear to people. And they say, well, you need to apply for an exemption then. That costs 80 quid. And then we'll tell you. So I went looking in the planning portal to have anybody else had this, you know, have they applied for an exemption? And if you can get an exemption from planning permission, well, surely you should exempt all of these from planning permission. Why gum up the entire system for something that everybody should be doing? We don't have the resources for it. So I went and found one almost identical to their situation where the exterior was going to be a little different than all of the others on the road. And the council said, yes, go ahead. We know it's a little bit different, but sure, a few others in the estate have already had this done, so full steam ahead. Applying for planning exemption is much simpler than applying for retention. They are now at their 3rd go at this, and it is really, really not a simple process. So, you know, it seems like it would be an easy thing to do, but actually it's not. And the clarity is the problem here.
Is there a worry that there's going to be more and more cases like this, considering that there is still that gap in the legislation, and like you said, it's on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, I mean, we have been contacted by people who said, I don't think I did any planning permission for my home because it was just getting a wraparound. It looks lovely like their home does. And now I'm worried I'm going to get a knock at my door from the council telling me that I need to apply for retention and potentially get it denied.
And the other thing is it creates a situation of inconsistency across the country.
Yeah.
I'll go again. It creates a situation of inconsistency across the country because different councils may choose to apply the legislation in different ways. So it's quite possible that if Clive and Samantha were living in Dunleary-Rathdown in a house that is exactly the same and exactly got the same work done, they wouldn't have a knock on the door. And on the other side, there might be people who haven't got a knock on the door in South Dublin County Council, but if they were living in Roscommon, they could get a knock on the door. So we need a national clarity to say this government encourages people to get external wall insulation and therefore it is exempted, and we just have that clarity and simplicity for people.
Paul, just on a separate topic, obviously there was a lot of attention about Conor McGregor's visit to the White House yesterday. Just your response to that, both in terms of Conor McGregor's recent history and in terms of suggestions that he could potentially be interested in running for president.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really scandalous that Conor McGregor was set up to represent the Irish people on St. Patrick's Day in the White House. He's a man with abhorrent views on a whole range of issues, and is also being found by a civil jury to have raped Nikita Hand in a most horrific way. And I want to pay tribute to Nikita for really speaking out about that. So I think it's abhorrent. It's abhorrent by the Trump administration to have promoted Conor McGregor in this way. I do think that the so-called quiet diplomacy of Micheál Martin, whatever day it was last week, Thursday or Friday, which was lauded by many commentators as being very smart, no longer looks very smart. Because the truth is that while Trump was praising Conor McGregor, Micheál Martin, while sitting in a room with him, didn't say a single word to contradict him. Micheál Martin praised Trump's unrelenting focus on peace. We know that overnight about 350 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed in assaults, new wave of air attacks that have been authorised and agreed by the administration. So I think, clearly the very cowardly bootlicking approach of Martin now is exposed for just that. In terms of Conor McGregor's presidential ambitions, I think they will go very, very far in the social media site owned by Elon Musk, where a lot of people will retweet him and boost him and so on. I really don't think they'll go very far in terms of actually winning public support of people in Ireland. I just don't. Conor McGregor is not a beloved figure in Ireland for all the reasons that people know. So I don't think that'll get off the ground in reality. It might exist in Donald Trump's head and Elon Musk's head and their various promoters over here, but I don't think it'll fly.
Can I ask what support you are getting, or indications of support you're getting from opposition parties for the bill and the government? And then secondly, there was an incident at the weekend, I think, where an Israeli man was approached by two women, one a former People for Profit candidate, I think possibly still a member of the party. Do you have a comment on that incident?
Yeah, firstly in terms of the bill, we haven't, we're just at the stage of launching the bill, right? So we haven't discussed with other opposition parties yet. The one thing I'd say about the government is that I did raise it last week, wasn't it, with Micheál Martin, and he said, I do not understand why the local authority is seeking planning permission, and he promised to, quote, examine the details and try to get back to me. I did follow up with him afterwards. In terms of the incident in Dunleary at the weekend, there's a couple of quick things. One, just to state, just factually, that Lena Seely is no longer a member of People Before Profit, hasn't been for a few months, I understand. Secondly, I understand that there's at least talk of there being some sort of criminal investigation or possible criminal investigation. So I wouldn't want to go into the details of what's alleged to have happened. But thirdly, and the main point I would make, is I do think there has been a failure in reporting on the incident by certainly some outlets in presenting this guy as an Israeli businessman, when it's clear that he was an active participant in the Israeli Defense Forces. He is a member, or was a member, of the so-called cyber warfare unit within the IDF. They're the people who are responsible for the pager bombs which killed children in Lebanon. And I think really, the real crime here is his actions as a member of the IDF, his support for the genocide, which has been quite vocal, as I understand it, on social media, and in terms of what happened overnight, which is clearly a complete breaching of the ceasefire. It's clearly gone now by Israeli choice, massacring of children, which comes on top of the attempt to starve the people of Gaza, deny them electricity, and so on. So that's where my focus would be.
Would you disagree with the form of that protest?
Just because there is at least talk of criminal investigation, I just wouldn't want to go into the details of, what's alleged to have happened or whatever. But again, just to restate that, I think there needs to be more discussion here about the role of this IDF guy and why he's a subject of the protest, as opposed to the media or sections of the media falling for the line that, this is a kind of innocent Israeli businessman who's being targeted because he's Israeli, or the suggestion that he's targeted because he's being Jewish, whereas, at least as far as I understand, that's not the issue here. The issue